Old Testament stuff you don't know. Now, turn with me to the book of 1 Kings, chapter 19.
Stepping out of Romans.
Yeah, getting out of Romans tonight. And actually, I was reading a little thing today, a little pamphlet today, a little book that I have. And something caught my eye, and I never had, I'm sure I read it before, but I never paid much attention to it. And, but anyway, this is about Elijah. Now, a lot of you that's Bible readers or Bible studies, you'll know that Elijah was a prophet, and God used him mightily to get people to realize that he is God. And Elijah, of course, you know, we all know the story about how he challenged the prophets of Baal, and how Baal's prophets couldn't bring down fire to consume the sacrifice, but Elijah, when he prayed, he showed off a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, we got a God that's worth showing off to this whole world that we live in. But he showed off a little bit because when he got the sacrifices ready and all that stuff, he poured water on all of it, you know, the wood and all that stuff, soaked it up real good, built a trench around it, and let it fill up full of water. And just to show off a little bit, it's what I say all the time, but you know, God wanted to prove that he wanted to prove there was no other God like the God of Israel. No other God like him. There's no other God like him yet today. And I'm telling you what, folks, there's a lot of gods out there. You know, and back in the old day there, they even had a statue set up to the unknown God, because in case they forgot one, you know, the sun god and all those gods that they had. You know, what was that they taught in school? Greek mythology. That's what it was. Greek mythology, you know, about all them gods and all those things. And that's been a long time since I've been in school. I'll just be truthful with you. And, but anyway, you know, Elijah had put forth a challenge, you know, the God that answers by fire, he will be God. Because they was against Baal, or the one true God. And we know how that story ended up. You know, God sent the fire down, it consumed the sacrifice, the wood, the altar that it was built on, and lapped up all the water around that. And Ahab was mad at Elijah anyway, because Elijah told him, he said, now there's going to be 3 years, I think it's maybe 3.5 years. 3.5 years that it wasn't going to rain upon the earth. And you know what? It didn't rain upon the earth for 3.5 years. And all those things. And what Elijah had said, it came true. And Ahab was seeking to kill Elijah when this challenge went down. This challenge went down, and after the challenge was over, Elijah had all the prophets of Baal killed 450 against one man. But he had them all killed. And it said there that after the challenge was over, that he had sent a guy up to see if there was any clouds in the sky or anything, it was going to rain or anything. And he said he sent him up there 7 times. And he come back, and he said, there's a cloud out there about the size of a man's hand. And he said, go to Ahab and tell him to get down, because there's going to be an abundance of rain out of a cloud the size of a man's hand. Now, that's God. because there was an abundance of rain. And it said that, it says here in this reading here, and now that's over in the 18th chapter, you read that, and I'll not take time to read all of that. But anyway, after all that, Ahab got down, and it said in the 19th chapter, the 19th chapter said, and Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done. Now you got to realize that Jezebel was a worshiper of Baal. And she was a worshiper of Baal. And with all how he had slain all the prophets with the sword, and Jezebel sent a messenger, Elijah, saying, so let the God do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. About this time. In other words, Jezebel said, well, God can kill me if I don't kill you by tomorrow at this time. By tomorrow at this time. So, now listen. Have you ever been to the point where you know that God done something for you and you were walking on cloud nine because of what God had done? Lots and lots and lots of times that there was no doubt. There was times that I would leave the church and I wouldn't even know I was home until I was already there and been there for a while because of the sweet spirit that I felt when I was at God's house. We talked about that a little bit this evening there, that the peace that you feel when you're in God's house is like peace you can find nowhere else. Nowhere else, not even in your home, not in, anywhere you go, you'll not feel the peace like you feel when you're in God's house and you know God's presence all around you. And now listen, Elijah had just experienced a mountaintop thing. I mean, the top of the top of the top of the mountains. You know, when God sent the fire down and consumed it, and he was laughing at the prophets of Baal, you know, they was jumping on the altar and they was cutting themselves and all these kind of things. And he told him, well, holler a little bit louder because he may be asleep or maybe he's on a journey or somewhere. And he was kind of making fun of the prophets of Baal. You know what, folks? There's a lot of gods out there that people worship today that cannot do anything for them other than to give them a little bit of peace of mind because they think that they're serving a true God. Serving a true God. When there's only one true God. And what the little pamphlet that I was reading or I have read, and now listen, folks, and it may be a little funny, but it said how to have a successful nervous breakdown. How to have a successful nervous breakdown. Now, that kind of caught me kind of funny when I read that, because who would want to have a nervous breakdown? Well, you know what, folks? After this mountaintop experience that Elijah had, and when she came to him, now he had just went against 450 prophets. He had slain them with the sword, and Queen Jezebel said, by this time tomorrow, I'm going to take your life. And you know what? Elijah had a nervous breakdown. He believed what this queen had told him, that she was going to have him killed by this time tomorrow. By this time tomorrow. Well, you know what, folks? Elijah took her at her word. Took her at her word. Not depending on the God had just delivered all these 450 prophets of Baal to his hand, but he took the word of one woman and run for his life. And ran for his life. And like what it said here was, by this time tomorrow, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And when he saw that, he arose and went for his life and came to Beersheba, which belonged to Judah, and left his servants there. And but he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He was going to try to hide himself so she could not find him, or no one would be able to find him. But you know what, folks? God knew exactly where he was at. God knew exactly where he's at. God knew that he was running because of what Jezebel had said. And God knew. And went on, it goes on to say here that he went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree, and he requested for himself that he might die. That he might die. Now, you know, he could have stayed there and Jezebel would have had him killed, but he ran off and hid himself and then requested that God would take his life. Requested that, you know, maybe he thought it would be easier if God took his life rather than Jezebel. I don't know. And of course, you know, he'd slain all those prophets of Baal with the sword. So he thought maybe she would cut him up in little pieces or something. You know, I don't know what he was thinking, especially after that mountaintop experience that he had just had. He knew that God could take care of him, but something happened. He had a nervous breakdown, I guess. But anyway, it said that he might die, and said, "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." I am no better than my fathers. So, and what this thing said, it said, now, if you want to have a successful nervous breakdown, and it gave me a list of things that we needed to do to have a successful nervous breakdown, and it said, forget that blessing, follow successful trials. You know, God, we don't go through not one trial that God won't send blessings after that trial. If we come through the trial the right way, we'll be blessed because we come through that trial. It said that all things work together for good to them that love God, that called according to his purpose. So those blessings, we got to forget that blessings comes after trial. Now, this was a trial that Elijah did not want to go through, that he was promised that his life would end by this time tomorrow if she didn't make it. And it said, remember to run away. To have a successful nervous breakdown, you've got to run away from your problems. You've got to run. And go as far as you can. Forget God is your help, and believe he no longer will help you. Now that's one of the key ones right there. Because you know what the Bible says is that I'll never leave you nor forsake you, but I'll go with you even to the end of the world. We've got to forget that. If we're going to have a successful nervous breakdown, we've got to forget that. Because we know that God fights for us, and we've got to forget that if we're going to be successful in a nervous breakdown. We've got to forget it. Aggravate your problems. Decide that you've done more than your fair share of anything. And you know what, folks? We have done very little. It's God that does everything for us. It's God that does everything for us. I can't even breathe without God. Can't even breathe without God. So we got to forget all that if we're going to have a successful nervous breakdown. All right? Ignore your past blessings. And I'm sure that all of us has had a lot of blessings, and I've had more than I can count. I don't think there's even numbers that could number that high of all the blessings that I've had from God, and how God has taken care of me even before I come to know Him as personal Savior of my life. Hey, listen, folks, as mean and as rotten as I was, I'd been dead a long time ago had it not been for God, because God had a plan for my life. God had a plan for my life. I didn't have no idea what it was, but He had a plan for my life, so I had to ignore all those things. I would have to ignore all those things that God has done for me and all the blessings that He's bestowed upon me in order to have a successful nervous breakdown. I'd have to forget all that stuff. Think that God owes you something and hasn't done right by you. God don't owe us anything. God don't owe us anything. But to have a successful nervous breakdown, we would have to think, well, He owed me this and He didn't do it. He owed me this and did not do it. He didn't owe us anything. He didn't have to send His only begotten Son into this world to be our sacrifice, to bring us back to Him, to make us a fit person to be able to go to heaven. He didn't have to do that. But He did. And I'm glad that He did. I'm glad that He made a way for me to escape the punishment and the torment of hell. I'm glad. I'm glad. And have a tendency to live in the past. You know, I know people that all the time, they want to bring up the way they lived in the past, and it's almost like they're glorifying their past life. I'm talking about the life they lived before they were saved. You know what? I regret every minute of what I'd done before I was saved. I do. I regret it. That I didn't accept Christ a lot earlier in my life. You know, I was taken to church by my grandmother up till I was about 5 to 6 years old. And then Mom and Dad got mad and decided we couldn't go to church anymore. But I was taught in Sunday school about Jesus. But I forgot it all. I guess I may have had a nervous breakdown when I was 5 years old or something there for a little while, or lost my mind. And I knew that there was something better than the life that I was living. I knew there was something better than the life I was living when I was out there in sin and doing the things that wasn't pleasing to God. I knew there was something better. I'd seen what the life that I was leading at that time. I seen what it would do to families. I seen what it would do to friends. I seen what it would do to a person, but I was still following that path. Still following that path. Ninth thing was develop a martyr complex. Now listen, what did Elijah ask for? He asked to die. He asked to die. Just go ahead and take my life, God, because I'm no better than my father's. Just go ahead and take my life. In other words, make me a martyr. And so to have a successful nervous breakdown, we got to do all these things to have it. And then the 10th thing was, said here, was to look for God to only sustain you with spectacular happenings. Spectacular happenings. You know, we know that He's a God of miracles. We know that He can do whatever He wants to, but the things that He supplies for us each and every day, a lot of times we ignore. A lot of times we don't realize that God is blessing us the way He's blessing us each and every day of our life. Think about it. I know every one of you woke up this morning. I know that every one of you, after you woke up, you were able to walk. I know that each and every one of you, after you woke up this morning, were able to talk. And hopefully you thank God for waking you up this morning. And every one of you, hey, you got here this evening, so I know that every one of you can see today too, after God woke you up this morning. And so those are blessings that comes from God that God wouldn't have to give us, but He does. And because He does, it tells us that He loves us that much. He loves us that much. He gave us the ability to be able to come to His house, not only this morning, but also tonight. Now, some of them didn't take advantage of it, but that's all right. Yeah. That's all right. I'm glad for the ones that did. I am glad for the ones that did. So, in order to have a successful nervous breakdown, to lump it all together with one saying is, forget God. Just forget God. If you want to have, I don't know of anybody that wants to have a nervous breakdown. I really don't. So, you know what? Just keep praising God. Keep living for God. Keep doing the things that God asked you to do, and you will have a successful life. Not a nervous breakdown, but a successful life if we do the things that God bids us to do. And with that, that's the message this evening, folks. I hope you got something out of this, and I hope none of you really wants to have a nervous breakdown like Elijah did, that he got to the point where he wanted to die. Well, you know what, folks? I've actually said that I'm ready to go, and I've actually asked God to take me. I have. When my wife passed away, I asked God to just go ahead and take me too. I didn't want to stay here any longer, but I'm glad that He left me. Because Bill and Roger have been saved since then, and the church has grown since then. So He had a purpose, Ruth, for me to stay here. And until He's done with me, I want to stay here. And when He's done with me, there's nothing I want better than to go home and to be with Him. Nothing that I want any better than to go home with Him. But I will stay here just as long as He's got a reason for me to be here. him today. And she said, I don't know why he's taking my children and leaving me. I said, he's got a purpose for it.
Yeah.
He has got a purpose for you to be here. You don't know what it is. I said, it may be to get some of your grandchildren saved. Whatever it might take. But there's a reason that you're still here. That you're still here. And the main reason is that he's not done with you yet. Not done with you yet. He's not done with me yet. Or I'd done be home to be with him. Not done yet. So as long as I'm here, I want to be about the Father's business. As long as you're here, you need to be about the Father's business. Father's business. And we won't have to worry about no nervous breakdown. All right? All right, let's get a numbering song. I hope you got something. Like I said, this sounds a little bit funny, but in order for us to have a successful nervous breakdown, we're going to have to forget completely about God. Forget about Him completely to have a successful nervous breakdown. So you know what, folks? I don't think I'll ever have a successful nervous breakdown because I can do nothing without God. I am nothing without God. All right, let's get a number of song. If you have a need of prayer, please come as we sing this song.